What is up, everybody, and welcome to FLW video. So a couple of days ago, I uploaded a deep dive on the Pokemon Lugia, as well as the exclusive move of Aeroblast because it got added back into raids in Pokemon Go. But there's a side, a different side, a dark side, if you will, that needs to be covered about Lugia. So believe it or not, we actually have Shadow Ho-Oh set to rotate out for the Giovanni Legendary Encounter, and it honestly makes so much sense and will probably end up being Lugia in the shadow form very soon. How cool would it be if it was actually in the darker variant? Niantic, if you're listening, please do that. That would be so cool. But of course, I'm not going to hold my breath on that. So what I thought we would end up doing in today's episode is taking a pre-look into Shadow Lugia and figuring out how exactly it could be used in Pokemon Go. How big of a buff is it going to get? Is it going to become usable from that raid side? And I'm sure a lot of you are super excited about this. I ended up getting a ton of comments on the original deep dive for Lugia, so I am very excited about that. But anyways, if you do enjoy this episode, make sure to turn that like button shiny, and of course, subscribe if you want to see more videos like this in the future. But without further ado, let's go ahead and get into the video. So the first thing that we can talk about are the stats for Lugia, and this is going to work out so well for Lugia in the shadow form, and we'll of course talk about that, and I think the overall stats are going to end up showcasing this. So if we take a look, its best overall stat is its defense stat that's ranked at 5th in Pokemon Go, and then finally its worst stat is its attack stat that is ranked at 290th in Pokemon Go with an attack stat of only 193. Now here's the fun part. Once a Pokemon becomes a shadow, it's not just aesthetic. There ends up being a bonus multiplier added to the stats, and here's how it goes. For the attack stat, you end up getting a 20% boost to the attack stat, and on the defense side, you end up getting a 20% nerf or a downgrade to your defense stat. So if we take a look at Lugia, basically what ends up happening is we really need the attack stat to go up, which is what happens, and then the defense stat ends up going down, but we have a lot of extra kind of room or cushion for Lugia because its defense stat is so high, which means it ends up getting a huge benefit out of the shadow variant. And then of course, if you take a look at the stamina stat, which gets unaffected, it's also super good for Lugia. So basically what's going to happen with it, or my prediction, is that Lugia is going to be a buffed up anchor Pokemon that's going to be able to do better attacks than just what the regular Lugia is going to be able to do. But of course, we'll head over to that when we take a look at some of those raid simulations. So if we go ahead and move over to the relative stat ranking, technically speaking, as far as the stats are concerned, Lugia has better overall stats versus flying type Pokemon compared to psychic type Pokemon, being 5th overall in flying and then being 8th overall in psychic. But unfortunately, Lugia is not able to unleash its full potential compared to flying type Pokemon because of the moveset. And that's because it doesn't have a flying type quick move to pair it up. But it's not too big of a deal because there are some synergies between flying type as well as the psychic typing, such as going up against a fighting type Pokemon. Both are going to be super effective. So generally speaking, if you want to go with the most absolute ideal moveset as a raider for Lugia, you would want to go with Extra Sensory and then pair it up with Aeroblast. If you do use Aeroblast, however, you are going to have to use an Elite Charge Team to get over to that move since it is exclusive. So that is something to kind of keep in mind here. But I'm excited to get into some of those raid simulations, so I think that's what we should go ahead and do. Now, as far as these raids are concerned, we're going up against a Heracross. Just imagine a line down the center here. This includes all Shadow Pokemon, and this ends up filtering out Shadow Pokemon. And then, of course, we can compare the Shadow Lugia to these. So the first kind of note that we have is that Lugia is not in the top 12, even if we filter out those Shadow Pokemon going up against a Heracross. So let's see how Shadow Lugia ends up performing. If we end up doing it overall compared to everything, Shadow Lugia ends up being in at the 13th position, which is pretty solid. And something kind of cool going on with this Pokemon is if you take a look at some of these other Pokemon, you'll see like, 1 feint, 2 feints, potentially Shadow Ho-Oh actually doesn't have any feints, and guess what? Neither does Shadow Lugia, so it ends up kind of confirming what we talked about earlier for it being a great anchor Pokemon in at that 6th position. Try to hold your team into the fight without having to revive or switch teams or anything like that. Now, if we go ahead and filter out all of the Shadow Pokemon and just compare Shadow Lugia to just regular Pokemon, including Megas, we can see that it ends up slotting into the 9th position just behind Ho-Oh, but the Ho-Oh would have to have a flying type hidden power, which you can't control on that one. So it's basically neck and neck with Ho-Oh. And the biggest takeaway from this specific raid is that I honestly think it puts Lugia into the usable category. So basically what I'm saying is if you want to use a Lugia in that shadow form, you're not going to be holding anyone else back. You're getting to the point where it's a decent performer, and of course it can be a fun kind of stylistic thing. You put it out there, people get to see it, and it can be a lot of fun that way. So let's go ahead and take a look at one more raid where we can see Lugia versus Zamazenta, which is a pure fighting type Pokemon in this form. And once again, we've got the shadows in on the left side here being included, and then we have all of the shadows excluded on the right side here. So if we go ahead and add in Shadow Lugia, we can see that it's in a very similar situation where the Shadow Lugia ends up slotting down into the 13th position. But once again, that is not a bad thing at all because it ends up performing as a boosted anchor Pokemon compared to the regular Lugia variant. And as you can see here, another thing to showcase it is the number of feints. So we have 20 feints coming from Lugia, and we take a look at some other Pokemon. We're seeing mid-20s, for example, 40 for Shadow Alakazam, and then we're seeing some very similar numbers out of Ho-Oh. In this particular case, Shadow Ho-Oh does end up performing a little bit better than Shadow Lugia, but I do think that this is a ton of fun and at least showcasing that Lugia can get put into the usable category. So for all of you out there who are major fans of Lugia, this is kind of like the time to shine in that Shadow variant. It makes this Pokemon usable for you, and it should be a lot of fun to get out there right now. I'm not as confident being able to predict how this Pokemon ends up doing on the PvP side, but due to the stats, getting that boost in the attack stat and having the extra kind of slack for the defense to go down and still be a top competitive Pokemon from the defense side, I would imagine it would be a straight upgrade on the PvP side as well. But of course, I would love to know what you think about Shadow Lugia in the comments section below. Would you love to see kind of the dark version added in? Would you power up this Pokemon? Would you unlock the move Aeroblast? Anything and everything, let me know in the comments section below. I also want to give a huge shout out to the supporters over at Patreon. They are members of the exclusive Discord only Discord, and it's so much fun. We talk about Pokemon Go, coordinate for raids, and so much more. So if you're interested in supporting the channel, connecting with Pokemon Go players, make sure to check out that link in the description below, and I will see you next time.